Hey folks, James here, and I wanted to give some quick context before you get to hear this week's episode with Mr. Bill Cox, who is running for mayor. When Fred and I got to record this episode with Bill back on January 23rd, at that time, he was the only candidate for mayor, and as fate would have it, later that day, literally a few minutes after we got out of the session with Bill Cox, Mr. Scott Sanford had officially announced his candidacy. As of the recording of our episode with Bill, nobody else was in the race yet. So a few comments that were made at that time of him being the only candidate obviously are no longer true. Since January 23rd, we've had the privilege of recording with Dr. Matt Rastami and attempting to record with Scott Sanford and Taylor Willingham. We have not yet successfully been able to record with Scott and Taylor. We have Taylor on the calendar for April 17th. Of course, that's late in the election cycle, so we'll be rushing his episode to publication. We had Scott on the calendar, and he had to withdraw for some voice reasons. It would have been a challenge for him, and obviously we want to be respectful of his ability to sit and talk for an hour straight. So we are going to be figuring out a time to record with Scott in the coming days, and obviously giving that high priority in our recording schedule. So wanted to put this out there before you listen to the episode to help things make a little bit more sense, and sit back, relax, enjoy this conversation with Mr. Bill Cox, mayor candidate on the McKinney Podcast. Thanks, y'all. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the McKinney Podcast. We celebrate what makes us unique by nature. Fred, the time has come for our last episode of these 2 days back-to-back. We might have saved the best for last. I don't know. We've had some real heavy hitters in the last 7 interviews.
Yeah, but you know what, though? Everybody, just like McKinney's unique by nature, and there is no comparing our community with other communities. I believe that it's really hard to compare who we've had on, in these last 2 days, 2 days straight of podcast recording we've been doing. It's really hard to say, who's better, who's this, who's that, because everybody is so unique. And we haven't had overlap of any industry or personality or anything yet. So, I'm totally jacked up and jazzed for this last one. One, primarily because of who we have, but 2, because it's finally the last one.
So our guest in this episode, if you didn't already know because you looked at the title of the episode before you hit play, Mr. Bill Cox. So let's give him the introduction that he deserves. All right. Man, I got to scroll to the top here because Bill's got a resume a mile long here. Bill is not just a lifelong resident of McKinney. He's a third-generation resident of McKinney. Graduate of McKinney High School and UT Austin. Hook 'em horns. Sorry, it didn't go our way this year. And he's lived in McKinney with his wife for 29 years, 2 grown kids, active members of First United Methodist here in McKinney. Bill has served in a lot of leadership roles. Past chairman and current member of the Collin College Foundation Board of Directors. And the list goes on and on. Former chairman of McKinney Planning and Zoning. He's a former member of City Council, former mayor pro tem, former president of McKinney Rotary Club, former McKinney Chamber of Commerce, past chairman of the board, as well as, and this is really cool, you were voted by chamber membership as the Kerry Cox Citizen of the Year by the McKinney Chamber of Commerce. And for those who don't know, that's not named after you. That's named after your dad.
Correct.
That is just so freaking cool, man. That had to be an amazing moment for you. As a third-generation resident of McKinney, Bill understands the importance of honoring our city's heritage while planning and preparing for its future. Now, he's not here as the co-founder of Kerry Cox or real estate. You're the second generation of Kerry Cox real estate, aren't you?
Right, second generation, right.
So you're not founder at all. You're the son of the co-founder.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so my brother and I, David, my brother and I own the company now, but our father founded the company in 1977.
Wow. Now, he is a Bill Cox, and he is running for mayor. After all of that resume, yeah, you're about to add mayor to the list, huh? That's what the objective is.
That's the plan.
Man. Now, I got to ask, you were on council before. You were mayor pro tem before. Did you ever consider running for mayor before, years and years ago?
It was considered years and years ago, as you say. Sometimes timing is in place and sometimes timing is not in place. And it's taken a lot of effort to get to this point, to get things in a position where you can actually consider running for mayor. And we were able to get things in place both at home and at the office. And the amount of support that we've had throughout the city, all areas of McKinney, it's just been overwhelming. And things fell in place, and we said yes, and we announced it, and then we filed for the office, and we've hit the ground running.
Man, Fred, you've known Bill a lot longer than I have.
Yes.
Any questions you want to start us off with?
It's one of those things where in my mind, I've got all these details, and at the same time, I'm like, is that a good question to ask? And does everybody know this? Or so let's go way back. Mm-hmm. Way back. Why did you even begin a career or an adventure in the civic service or public office?
So years and years ago, we were taught that you give back to your community. You serve. You do things for free. You serve other people. You serve in various positions of leadership. You serve as the leaders of organizations versus merely a member of that organization. And there is a big difference. And we as a family were taught by our grandparents and our parents to work hard. We liked what we saw in our parents and grandparents, we wanted our families to have that same experience. So why did you stay in McKinney? That's why. Because of the examples that we were given, how we were shown to raise a family.
Okay, so did you hold any political office in high school? Did you run for student council, any of those things?
No, I served in not in high school.
No. But you were part of either sports team or civic organizations?
Yeah, I played.
All right, well, first off, name your alma mater.
McKinney High School, McKinney High Lions.
He's a lion.
Yeah,
he's not a Bronco.
That's right.
Or North didn't exist back then. It was Boyd and High, right?
It was McKinney High.
There wasn't a Boyd.
High School. That's correct.
That's all that there was.
Okay.
Now, prior to McKinney High, there was a Boyd High School.
Oh.
Prior to.
Okay.
Yeah, so my parents, and that generation were Boyd High School. Yeah.
But McKinney High is where it's at.
McKinney High is where it's at. Blue and gold. Blue and gold.
Blue and gold all the way.
So, and so were you part of, did you play a sport? Were you in a club?
I did, yeah. I played football, high school football, and junior high. And back then we called it Tiger League football, which was your first year of real tackle football. And then I played on the baseball team, McKinney High baseball team. And this is all in the late 70s, early 80s.
Did you bring home trophies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So more bragging rights.
More bragging rights.
So baseball That's and right. McKinney High, there is none better. There is none better in McKinney.
There is none better.
Okay.
So in Texas, you have basically 4 or 5 choices that most kids are looking at for college. If you choose to go to college, of course, lots of folks go to trade school or do something else. But if you go to college, it's UT, A&M, Baylor, Texas Tech is where most everybody goes. Some University of Houston, some Stephen F. Austin, my alma mater, Axum Jacks. Most kids don't ever make those decisions. You chose UT. How did that come about?
Earl Campbell was the reason I went to the University of Texas.
Okay.
I watched him play football at the Cotton Bowl, the old Cotton Bowl, in a game, and I thought, man, the scene, the environment, the feel, the vibe, the music, the noise. I just said I wanted to be a part of that. And at that time, I was 14 or 15 years old, something like that. And that was the plan. So I applied, got in, graduated, and some things just fall in place. And that was one of those things that just fell in place. Great experience, Austin. We loved Austin in our time there, and it is a very unique city in its own right.
Yes.
But yeah, Longhorn through and through. bleed burnt orange.
So you met your wife there, I take it?
No, I did not. I met
Okay.
her here in McKinney.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you get done with college and you have the unique blessing and fortune of your dad has already been very successful in business. Kerry Cox Real Estate is well underway at that point. Did you just know ahead of time, I like the family business. I've seen Dad do real estate during your formative years. I don't know how far back in your lifetime your dad was doing the company, but I'm guessing that there was plenty of opportunity for you to either take up the family mantle and do real estate or do something else. How did that choice come about?
Yeah, great question. After college, I stayed in Austin. I remained in Austin, and I worked at the state capitol.
Oh, really?
In and around the political scene, and worked on various staffs, both mainly in the Senate. And then to your question, I always wanted to move back to McKinney and work in the family business, and which was opened in 1977. So this is early 80s, mid 80s. And I knew in the back of my mind I was going to move back to McKinney. And I never will forget the day. It was February 1991. My dad called and said, let's do it. Let's make the move. It's time for you to move back, and let's make a go of it. And I moved back and in 93, and I've loved every minute of it. And it's interesting. What we do is a relationship business. It's not a technical business. It's a very much a relationship driven business. So if you understand that, the quicker you'll be successful in that business. It's like most of the things that we do, it's relationship driven.
Mm-hmm.
The technical part you can teach. You can teach people the technical part.
Yep.
And that was the main thing that I enjoyed about the thought of moving back to McKinney, was being in a relationship business.
I love that. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right on into the good stuff. Things lined up. You've given us the, people would say, the my English degree in me, always bristles at this. But when you say someone was raised right, you were raised right. Your parents didn't let you stray. They instilled this service-minded support, give back, share with your community, out of the overflow and abundance of blessings that you have. You announced you're running for mayor. What is there a singular topic or situation, circumstance, condition here in McKinney that you said this needs to be addressed, or something that personally you hold near and dear and you want to see that change happen?
The reason why is now the right time?
Yes, sir.
I remember how it was growing up in McKinney. I remember how safe it was. I remember how comfortable and how you knew your neighbors. You knew who your friends were. And it was a safe place to be. And that feeling was one that I've always remembered. And that led me to the public service. It led me to the volunteerism, and it led me to where I am today. Just that feeling of how McKinney was and how it still is in some regards. There are areas of McKinney that haven't changed very much. And then there are areas of McKinney that are very different. Areas of McKinney that were not even on the drawing board 20 and 30 and 40 years ago. And that's one of the exciting things about where we live is what it is. It's very unique, and it's very diverse. It's very progressive. And you just don't see that very often in a city of, back then we were 15,000 people, and now we're approaching 225,000 people. And that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And the level of support from all areas of McKinney, and what led me to this place is the amount of service I've given. And I know McKinney.
Excellent. So in that, and I'm glad that you followed up with, you remember how safe McKinney was, and you said you still view it as safe today. At the same time, there are some in our community who feel that McKinney has lost its small townness, that we've become another, a lot of people have, I've seen it in the comments that said, that our crime or our criminal activity rivals that of Dallas or Houston, stuff like that. Do you feel that there is that is a growing concern, or do you feel that maybe those, because obviously if crime happens to somebody, I'm not discounting anyone who's had a situation, but do you feel that we as a city are headed in that direction?
Along with the positive things that come with growth, they go from a small town to a city. You have some things that maybe aren't as positive as some of the other things. So yes, we need to make sure that we address a crime problem. If we're short on police, if we're short on training, we need to address that. If there's room in those job placements, then let's get those filled. Those things will cost money. So at some point you'll have the conversation about how do we pay for safety? But yeah, if that is a concern, we need to address it.
Okay, and so actually, you're just feeding me. I had other things lined up, but I'm like, okay. So with that, yes, as we grow, obviously our infrastructure needs to grow. Our municipal services and personnel need to grow. One thing that was mentioned in the McKinney Cares group, someone asked about apartments, and that also kind of coincides with the idea that people are saying, McKinney used to be a bunch of homes and neighborhoods. Now it's like apartments. And so do you have a stance or a position on the number of apartment development growth that has been happening in our community?
There's more to it than stop growing apartments, stop building apartments. You've got the cost of land, cost of construction, and what it costs for someone to buy a home. And you add all of that up, and a lot of families can't afford that. So they would go to an apartment life for some period of time. Another question is, if someone's property has the right to build apartments, you really can't stop someone that has the right.
Yep.
The real question may be in rezoning from some use to apartments, to multifamily. And maybe that's the real question we should be asking. I'm not here to advocate no growth or continued growth, but if someone has the right to build apartments under their current zoning, they have that right.
Well, I think when it comes to the apartment question, and I don't intend to speak for Fred because he's literally sitting right next to me.
Right here.
The housing question is best looked at in a sort of accessibility perspective to every strata of our society. Certain people, they can afford an apartment, and that's where they're at in life right now. They might aspire to home ownership. They might aspire to have a condo or a townhome or something. Maybe they don't want to have a yard. Maybe they prefer some other type of living. There's young families that need to be able to afford entry-level housing. There's more established families that would prefer to have options for more luxurious, more affluent accommodations in a gated community with lots of amenities that come along with that. And I think from what I've seen from everybody that is involved in the decision-making, it really comes back to not just let's have fewer apartments. It's we need to make sure that every tier of the housing conversation has ample opportunity to flourish. For apartments, yes, but also for townhomes and condos, for entry-level homes for families, and for educators, and for police officers, and for the shift supervisor at a restaurant. And, not everybody works at Raytheon and makes $120,000 a year. or $220,000. There's a lot of people that make really good money at some of our employers in town. I'm looking at you, Emerson. I'm looking at you, Encore Wire. But what's your take on that? I know I just rambled a little bit. That's kind of my thing with housing is some of that's parroting what George and what Brian Loftmiller and what people on McKinney Housing Finance Committee and Jeray Feltis and other people that I've had long conversations with. What's your take on the housing conversation of how do we create good opportunities for people in every sector of the housing conversation?
Yeah, and you mentioned good examples. You've got all the new restaurants and businesses, and those employees need to have a place to live.
Yeah.
And those business owners need a place to live. And that may be two different pay scales, two different levels of income. And some may want a gated community with a yard and the landscaping and the pool, and then others may not be at that place in life. You may be a 2-income household with 2.2 kids, and your lot in life at the moment does not allow you to do what the person who writes your check can do. So we need to have those options. Yeah, we need to have those options to help fill the restaurants and fill the employee level citizen in McKinney.
Yeah, but just to be clear, you're not saying that people in apartments are lesser.
Not at all.
Okay, because it's like I was thinking, I know several couples where the 2.2 kids moved out, and they looked at their home and they were like, we're paying for a lot more than what we're actually using, and sold their homes and actually are in townhomes or apartments because it was they didn't say they downsized, they said they right sized because that was they're like they want to take their money and use it more effectively for other things they want to do, but at the same time, our oldest, before he bought his home, he was living in an apartment, and it was near the cost of a mortgage for his apartment. He just didn't have the down payment aspect of that living. So that's something that I'm just that's good to know, though, because and I appreciate that you are not just a squash the apartment growth, because they're people too, and they chose to live somewhere, and they chose our community
exactly
to build their business, to put them in our schools, and hopefully they go to McKinney High, right?
Correct.
Okay, so let's get a little controversial here.
Let's do it.
Airport. The airport expansion is moving forward. What do you see are, give us two benefits of that, and if possible, two things that are concerns for people who are anti-airport expansion.
So the city owns property. The city has assets, and one of those assets is the airport. And it's our job to make those assets be as good as they can be, whatever they are, be it buildings in downtown McKinney that the city owns, that they just moved out of, be it the historic area. So it's council and the mayor's role to make those assets be as good as they can be. Regarding the airport, there are documents, agreements, meetings that are confidential. Those documents aren't out in the public. And until you can see those documents, it would be difficult to weigh in on here's the best course of action. To how do you make decisions from this chair, not knowing all of the facts?
Mm-hmm.
The airport has been proven to be a need. When you look at growth patterns and you look at heat maps that show traffic and transportation trends, it leads towards another airport in DFW. But specific to your question, until we can see those documents and those agreements and have all of the facts in front of us, it's hard to say what direction, what's the best decision. It's easy to say yes or no if you've seen the docs, but if you haven't seen them, it's hard to weigh in one way or the other.
I like that unwillingness to put a firm position out there. There are certain things that you don't have access to yet, certain resources that as a private citizen, you're not privy to unless you do some digging or make a lot of phone calls. And I'm sure nobody would withhold something from you if you asked to see a report or a feasibility study or an environmental impact study or whatever it happens to be. And I think it's wise that you're not, stamping something on a campaign trail that may come back to bite you once you're in the seat, if that is what the good people of McKinney choose to do. Smart move there. Now, some of the questions, I've been reading through a few different threads, trying to find what the people wanted us to ask you. One of the themes that comes up over and over again is, of course, the airport, which we just covered. And I'm not going to bang that drum because we spent a full hour yesterday talking with George about it. I think that's going to be a very thorough explanation of things there. Other pieces of the puzzle are communication and transparency. Having more dialogue with citizens around town. What do you think your posture is as mayor, hypothetically? How do you interact with people? How do you invite dialogue and constructive criticism? How can you, as mayor, improve on the level of transparency and openness in the role? Because love George. Great mayor. There's a lot of times when George will, instead of answering a question, refer someone to a document or a report or a resource that's on the city's website, or like yesterday with flytki.com. It's like, there's a whole bunch of stuff on that website. Go read it. Go educate yourself. Go inform yourself. Some people prefer to have a dialogue and get answers in a more informal fashion. What's your take on that and the responsibility of mayor to be accessible to the private citizens and be able to have those kind of informal dialogue points without going through a Freedom of Information Act request, whatever it happens to be? It's
important that the citizens have access to their elected officials. At the same time, this is not a career. It's not a paying profession.
Sure.
So most that would serve in such a position still need to have a day job, if you will.
Yeah.
But however, if you choose to run and you are fortunate to win, you need to be accountable to your citizens. And if that's, call it office hours or televising on a different way, our meetings or what have you, I think we need to do that. But to your point, Fly TKI, there is good information on there. There's good information on the city's website. All of the zoning cases are on there prior to public hearings. So you if you care to dig through, you can find answers to your questions. However, I still think your elected officials should be accountable and accessible to the citizens.
Yep. Fred, anything that's burning you up, or do I proceed?
You have another hot question?
It's more of a what comes next question.
Oh, no. Go ahead. Go for it.
Yeah. So you look back at the last two mayors, Brian Loftmiller, George Fuller, by all accounts and by all measures, oversaw tremendous growth, economic growth, population growth, lots of new projects, lots of new businesses coming to town, lots of opportunity for a whole bunch of very exciting things. Under George's tenure, we have airport expansion, we have the Sunset Amphitheater, we have District 121, we have Hub 121, Independent Financial builds their second tower. There's a lot of things that have happened in the last two mayoral terms. What are one or two things that a Bill Cox mayor term, will you be looking to promote or advocate for certain ideas or projects or, impacting the city in real tangible touch and feel sort of ways? Obviously, this is all hypothetical.
Right.
But if you had your way, 4 years of Bill Cox as mayor, what's one or two things you hope to accomplish that the rank and file citizens of McKinney would feel?
You look back over the last two mayors, the last 8, 12, 14 some odd years, McKinney went through the fastest growth that it's ever experienced. We were named number one in everything, number one in this and number one in that. And, you have to have good leadership in place to be able to keep up with and maintain a certain level of service that your citizens come to expect.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't want to say settle for, but you have to continue to work to keep up with the citizens' demands and their requirements. I'd like to say we look back and said, wow, we're better than we were in some area. It's really hard to pinpoint one area sitting here in this chair right now and what would be the one area that I really would say we need to be really good at this. Our citizens, for them to be happy and excited about McKinney, tell people about McKinney, encourage people to move here, encourage people to come visit, spend their money here, and for people to walk away with a positive feeling, a positive experience in McKinney. That's what I would want.
Let me ask the question a different way. Let me flip it on its head, make it maybe a little bit easier to give a specific. When you look at the repertoire that we have compared to other cities in the area, maybe opportunities for McKinney to get a leg up competitively, and take that any way you want. I'm trying to leave this a little bit vague so you can answer the question any way you see fit. What do you feel like are maybe one or two things that are missing from McKinney? Resources or destinations or something that we don't have at this time that you would want to see attracted by EDC grants and incentives, by tax abatements, by other opportunities of public-private partnership, or whatever. Something that's not currently here that you would like to see here in the 4 years that you serve as mayor, hypothetically.
As we continue to grow and continue to have this commercial growth, that's good for the tax base. That's good for the homeowners. So all of the things that the previous administrations, George and Brian, have brought to McKinney are positive experiences. It's increased the level of commercial, of the amount of money paid for our commercial tax base. So let's continue that. And you look at what's in the pipeline with amphitheaters and water parks and airports. Those are all positive things regarding the tax dollars they will bring in. Things are happening so fast, James, it's hard to say. This one area, I really wish we had or I really wish we had that's a challenging question to answer.
Yeah.
When we have so much here now.
We do, yeah.
We can't be a settle for city. We can't be, okay, now we're comfortable, let's relax and take a breath. We can't afford to do that. The good news, we're on a roll, if you will. We're on a high to demand more, expect more from our government and from the city and from our citizens. We're in a good place right now. We really are.
I can't remember where I saw it. Someone, and I don't know if it's directly, I don't even think it's directly related to you, but another concern that I've seen over and over again are people are, there seems to be a growing voice for some sort of mass transit system within McKinney. Do you have a stance on that, for or against, or what would you like to see in terms of moving
transportation?
Yeah, moving the populace around.
There has been public transportation in McKinney in the past via bus service. For whatever reason, it's not here anymore. It's probably the most well-known is DART, which stops just south of here. You have to be a member to get their services. And in order to be a member under current state law, you've got to do away with your 4A and your 4B, which is the economic development and the community development corporations. And we would need to divert those funds into the mass transit fund unless state law is changed. If you do that, then you're going to change the income structure of the city. I do think some form of mass transit, public transportation to and from the region would be something to consider locally. I think we need to study doing a transit within McKinney, within Collin County. Again, there have been those services in the past, and maybe it's time to come back and look at those.
The challenges from an infrastructure standpoint, the challenges from disrupting existing development, obviously, it cannot be overstated. You look at all of those systems, and I'm a big proponent of finding some way of having public transportation in ways that folks Plano and South enjoy. Right. You look at Denton County's Transit Authority, DCTA. They've got rail, they've got buses, but those things have been in place for decades. It would be exceptionally difficult to try to install something, whether we're talking about eminent domain and right-of-way and displacing current businesses. It's a very complex situation, but I definitely agree. A lot of folks are severely impacted by a lack of some sort of public transportation. So I don't know what it's called, but there is some sort of bus program that is only for low income, or I forget who it was. Spainhour was commenting about it. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? There's some kind of transportation system locally where you have to prove eligibility to be able to ride the vehicles. I forget what that's called. Somebody in the comment section is going to help us out on that. But I don't know what that is called because I was not aware of such a thing. And then Spainhour commented about it and was talking about how the eligibility thresholds were very restrictive. So most people weren't able to take advantage of it. Like college kids, for instance, if they're trying to attend class at Collin College or whatever, they're not currently eligible for this bus program. Both of you have looks on your faces like you've heard of what I'm talking about.
Yes.
We don't know what it's called either.
There is a county-wide transportation system. I'm not sure of the local senior citizen qualifying.
Right. That sounds right.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank on what it's called.
Right,
I'm sorry.
right.
I'm not being very helpful with my questions right now.
There is a challenge that's worth mentioning regarding mass transit, and that is the DART line. So physically, the track in McKinney is not set up for DART, meaning the width of the track. So, which
you mean the red line that goes up Highway 5 down in Plano? Is that what the track you're referring to?
No. So there's freight service in McKinney. It goes through downtown McKinney, and then it goes and then stops and goes back north. So the physical track, the actual track the train runs on, is not equipped for the DART equipment. So there would need to be a somehow transfer or additional right of way, which, back to your point, that gets a little tricky. It's a little tight in some areas in downtown McKinney. So there are some logistical things to work through in order to get mass transit via rail to McKinney.
It's kind of the sort of thing where we would almost need to be time travelers, huh? And go back 30 or 40 years before things were built up to the degree they are now, would have made installing such things quite a bit easier.
Right.
Well, even then, just expanding roads, because one of the number one comments I hear is, we're already so congested. And, the next thing is, well, we need to expand. And then the following, without missing a beat, it's like, so that means it's going to be even worse because barricades and barrels and all these other things before we can, acquire the land and pave it and all the other stuff. But, you do bring up a good point about that transportation option. Homelessness in McKinney seems to be a growing situation. What, if elected mayor, how will you address that?
I've seen this firsthand. There's more homeless population than in years past. First off, if you are in that situation, you have to want to help yourself first. I do think that as a city, we need to address it. And if that's a shelter at some location, then let's look at that. But I do think it's a concern more and more. And where does the population originate from? I haven't seen those studies. But I agree with you, Fred. It's there, and it's there enough that it warrants addressing, however that is from a city standpoint.
Anytime this I'm going to tick some people off.
Where are you going here, Fred?
I
get nervous whenever you chuckle like
I've
that.
I've heard so many times that if you have a need for housing people and you have a golf course, what you do is you close the golf course and you've got all sorts of acreage to build affordable housing on. But I'm not going to say that,
Are you trying to take away our golf courses, Fred?
That's what I said. I'm going to I heard a comedian talk about it that way, but I don't play golf, so it doesn't impact me very much. I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to light me up. That was just comedic relief. That is not a stance of, Bill Cox or James or RiskWell or FredShots.
It's definitely not my stance because I know for sure that if we touch Oak Hollow or Westridge or two public courses in McKinney, there's going to be a whole lot of very ticked off people. So.
Yeah, but he said that, we need to utilize our
I don't
city
think Bill
resources.
Cox said anything about converting golf courses into homeless shelters.
It was a far jump from the airport comment. So,
Bill, I warned you about this guy. I'm telling you, man. Oh man, what have we not talked about that you want to? You got a page full of notes there. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Did we even touch any of the
two or three of the questions I told you before?
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we did. As far as what we didn't hit on, lessons learned.
That's it. There you go.
Lessons learned.
You have held so many roles around town. Civic engagement, business leadership, nonprofit leadership. You are a lifelong Rotarian, from what I understand. What kind of lessons have you learned in these very broad, different life experiences? You've seen business, you've seen civic engagement, you've been front and center for how the government should work on behalf of its people, and you've been front and center with service in a nonprofit sense. What kind of lessons have you learned, man?
The number one lesson is learn to listen. Learn to listen to people. You'll become smarter if you just learn to listen and talk less. Listen and talk less. As we said earlier, there's a difference in being on a committee or a foundation or a board and taking control and leadership of. And I've done that in these different organizations. And the main lesson that I've learned is to be patient and to listen. Learn to work with other people. Learn to work with people that don't think like you do, that don't look like you do, people that are different than you are. Those are the lessons that we've learned.
So you're going to bring to any discussion that the person across from you has worth and value and has something to say.
Correct.
And if they come at you, in a spirited manner, let's say a little more animated, spitting a little bit of venom, how will you receive that?
Well, and I've read that book. I've seen that, and people get emotional over different things. Certain things are more important to some people. When someone reacts in a way that you described, it's that there's a reason. There's a reason someone is adamant about a position or adamant about a topic or an item on an agenda. And they have every right to be like that. What you don't have the right to do is to be disrespectful.
Yep.
Treat someone less than they are, or in your eyes, if you think they're less than you are. You don't have that right. You do not have that right.
Yep. Absolutely right.
And so on that note, did Ohio State deserve the national championship?
At the time, they were playing better than anybody else. Two plays in the Texas game cost us that game.
Yep.
The touchdown before halftime, and then the
75 yards right
scoop
at the end. Yeah.
But hey, no other team was in the finals, in the semifinals the last 2 years. We've had a great team, great leadership, great culture. The one thing that Texas now has is the culture.
Yep.
It's a culture
of winning.
Yeah.
Of excellence.
They understand what the process of winning. They understand that process.
Well, they finally got rid of Quinn Ewers, so Arch Manning gets to go do his thing now. I mean, it's what is that Chinese proverb? Man who chases two birds catches neither. It's like, okay, well, you had two quarterbacks, very different skill set.
Very different.
One is stuck in the pocket like a bowl of jelly, and the other one likes to get around and, wreck stuff and make it
Mix
happen.
it up.
Mix it up. There you go. That's a polite way of saying it.
Yeah.
Mix it up.
But I love that, I purposefully had that Ohio State question you queued up after the previous question, and true to form, you did not denigrate, you did not demean or any of those things. You just gave, the facts, and, you said they're the ones, and these are the things that we can do better. But, that's excellent. So, there it is, unscripted for you, that Bill Cox lives by what he says.
Yeah. And I'm looking through these questions and I don't see anything else that we haven't covered in some way, unless it's, something that is, dogmatic and hostile, and we're not going to give those kind of people the light of day.
No.
They may have already been booted from the group for all I know.
That's right.
So,
okay. So currently it is January 23rd. There is nobody that has announced that they are running for mayor. If you hit this campaign season unopposed, what is your campaign going to be like?
Well, we have a lot of momentum moving forward, and it would be hard to stop that train. We are reacting as if someone will file and run.
Somebody has to. Somebody's got to think that they can do this job better than you, and have an idea in their head.
Sure.
That, don't get me wrong here, folks. Don't take our appreciation of Bill's resume and skill set and considerable qualifications to mean that nobody else has a chance. The good people of McKinney can do whatever they please. I think it would be very difficult for someone to come in and put their name in the hat and convince enough voters that they are better qualified, they have better ideas, they're better prepared to do this job than Bill Cox. But that does not mean that you should not put your name in the hat if you think that you can do a great job, if you think that people of McKinney should choose you for their next mayor. By all means, get your butt over here. Let's go. That being said, if that's you, you better come ready to play, man, because Bill Cox is a freight train. And if I've got a hard time imagining anybody beating Bill Cox in this race,
and that's just personal opinion.
That's just my personal opinion. That is not the opinion of this podcast. That's not. Let me rephrase that. That's the opinion of half of this podcast, but that's not an official endorsement. We don't endorse political candidates at all. We have to stay as neutral as we can until we know who the opponent is, whoever they may be. It's really hard to have this conversation because it's not merit against merit. It's not disposition against disposition. It's really hard to have that conversation.
That's right. And in the past, we have had opposing candidates on the podcast.
Not at the same time.
Not at the same time. Not at the same time. But,
that'd be electric.
That would be fun to have an actual open forum.
We Fred and I do intend to be the debate moderators of whatever ends up happening, whoever that may be. So, AJ, I know you'll listen to this episode. David Richey and other people that are supporting your candidacy.
Name dropping.
Folks that I know are in your corner. When the time's ready, when the time comes, give us a call. We'll be there ready to moderate the debate and give both people a hard time. No softball questions, Bill. So, have we missed anything you wanted to talk about?
You guys do a great job. This is a great service. It will only continue to grow. So I encourage you to keep up the good work. Keep pushing the questions out there. Keep having the guests come in that are involved in McKinney.
Yep.
You guys are doing great work.
Okay, so we have time for lightning round?
Go for it, man.
All
Let's
right,
go.
so lightning round. No right or wrong answers.
This is where you get put on the spot, by the way.
That's right.
Fred loves the tough ones.
This is the one that will make you really sweat. Okay, so I'm going to go for the jugular. George Strait or George Jones?
George Strait.
George Strait. Okay. Hank or Willie?
Hank.
Patsy Cline, Taylor Swift.
Patsy Cline.
Come on.
You never know.
You look at this man. Is he going to turn down Patsy Cline for T-Swiss?
You never know. You have children, right?
Yes.
Grown kids.
How old are they?
27 and 25.
27, 25. Boys or girls?
Yes.
One of each. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So on the record, who is easier?
They both are very talented and they both are very different.
Look at that.
You've got two kids.
He just tight-roped that like, someone passed him the ball and he just tick, 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 touchdown.
Man.
Didn't even have to pause about it. All right, James.
Well, he does have the air of someone who has been in the public eye long enough to very carefully answer a question.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
but actually, your children are grown and all that. How long you've been married?
29 years.
And what's the one thing that you truly appreciate about your wife?
Her patience.
Her patience.
There you go.
Excellent.
And I think every smart husband would say the very same thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, James. Hit him with that last one.
Hit him with the big one.
All right, Bill. So here's our question. The last one we like to stop every episode with. Who would win in a fight between a giant polar bear, 10, 12 foot tall polar bear, and a big old great white shark, huge shark? The fight occurs in a body of water that is 6 feet deep, but of infinite size. There's no edges to the pool. It goes on forever. Who wins, polar bear or shark?
Polar bear.
Okay.
Water's too shallow for a great white.
Bingo. I tell you, man, these people keep bringing up the same answers that I bring up. Fred is team shark.
Shark, underdog.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll modify the question. If it were 10 feet deep.
If it's 10 feet deep, I'm probably switching to team shark.
Oh, see? Okay, so...
Because the polar bear can't stand up on its hind legs and have both claws and a mouth.
See? So...
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So environment dictates a little bit of the skewing of the
Just because something's a great warrior doesn't mean it's a great warrior in every environment, Fred. You put a peregrine falcon in a swimming pool, they're not going to be all that.
Lose. They're going to lose.
Yeah.
The duck would win.
Oh my gosh, I cannot handle you today, man.
Listen,
get me away! I've been around Fred for 8 hours in the last 2 days. I've had enough. I'm good. Bill, anything else you want to end us with? Any call to action? Anything you want to tell your listening audience and your supporters out there?
Why should people vote for you?
Because I know McKinney. I've served here for my entire life. I've raised my family here. I was raised here. I was taught the right way to do things. And the time is right for me to be the mayor of McKinney.
Now, I've heard from multiple people that it took a lot of convincing for you to say yes. This is the right time. Not that you needed convincing to be mayor, but that you needed convincing that now was the right time.
So the amount of work that it will take to serve as mayor, most people don't see it, and it is a sacrifice from your family and from your business. And until you get those things in place, until you get yeses, not maybes, yeses from those areas of your life, it's really hard.
Yeah,
it's really hard to push that button.
Yeah,
but once those yeses said yes, and once that button was pushed, we are full steam ahead.
Yep.
Full steam ahead.
And just to be clear, this is a paid position.
$400 a month, Fred.
That's right. But there are some people within our listening and viewing audience who have no idea. I've spoken with people who think that the mayor position is a 9 to 5 or 8 to 6. They think that you're just mayoring all day long and that you're drawing some sort of C-level income. So when I found out what the mayor is making, the first thought that came to mind was, why would anybody do this?
Mm-hmm.
Why would anybody do this? Because four hondo a month for the amount of just let's say spirited interaction that you will have, I'm like, that's not for me. I could not do that.
The number of comments directed at George that talk about all the things that he is in favor of or whatever, that accuse him of greed, of nepotism, of backroom deals, I just have to smirk at those comments because they come from someone who simply does not understand all of the checks and balances in place, all of the laws against elected officials and their corruption. This is not Chicago, people. We don't have the mob down here. It's not like that. If someone in elected position were to use their power for personal gain, they wouldn't just find themselves on the wrong end of the polling. They would find themselves in front of a judge and jury and probably in jail.
That's right.
So these kind of accusations of greed, of nepotism, of backroom deals, they're not just foolish and impolite and unkind. They're just dangerous. They undermine public support and public trust of elected officials categorically. And I just denounce all of those kind of comments as being absurd on their face.
No, that's right. And so that's why I just want to, get that out there, that $400 a month, that is what this position comes with.
Yeah.
And, as you've already said, it's a sacrifice of your own business. It's a sacrifice of family time and all those things. And so that, when it comes to the mayor, our city council, those people are truly the servant leaders of our community. And if you like them, that's great. If you don't like them, you get out and vote. And if there are things that they have concerns about, they need to talk to you, period.
Anything you want to add there? Because I know we kind of answered the question that we posed to you. Any last words, Bill? Anything you want to say about, what should people be doing other than, call your campaign office and get a yard sign and, make a contribution if they feel so inclined?
As this campaign progresses and as, the election day comes, get involved, educate yourself on the issues, educate yourself on who's who's for what, who understands McKinney. And please know, this is a race for the McKinney, City of McKinney. So educate yourself on who knows what McKinney is. Where has it come from? How did we get to where we are now? Those are things that are important.
Love it. Okay.
All right.
And that's as far as we're going to go. Anything else, and we'll just sound like we're, endorsing or being unbiased, and that's not the case.
Right.
So, hey, this has been another episode of the McKinney Podcast. Definitely want to thank Bill Cox for spending some of his valuable time here with us today. Check the show notes for any links Bill wants to share. It's BillCoxForMayor.com. Is that
Correct.
right? Yeah, BillCoxForMayor.com is where you go to find out more about Bill's platform. If you want to learn more about him and his family and what he stands for, what his values are, what his ideas and vision are, if you feel so inclined to support his campaign and want to request a yard sign or make a financial contribution, you can do all of that at BillCoxForMayor.com. And that is all for this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for sticking with us today. It's a little bit longer than normal, but time very well spent, I think. For those watching on YouTube, we'd like to thank you for that and listening on all the podcast channels. This has been another episode of the McKinney Podcast, where we celebrate what makes us unique by nature. Make it a great day, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all take care.